Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is James Hansen. I'm the Vice President and Publisher of NextGov, the Federal Technology Division of Government Executive Media Group. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's program, Maximizing Data at the Edge, hosted by Intel. Data is often the backbone of government IT modernization, and ensuring that data is agile, streamlined, and insight-driven for the mission. It is at the forefront of agencies' data management strategies. However, many struggle with how to properly harness and store it in a way that is truly efficient and doesn't disrupt the mission. Today, we're going to explore how to optimize your data pipeline by turning data into insights and then insights into action. Joining me today for the discussion, I'm excited to have Darren Pulsifer, the Solution Architect for Public Sector at Intel, Tim Ahrens, the Deputy Division Chief with the Information Resource Management Operations Messaging Systems Office, and Technical Lead for the Center for Analytics at the Department of State. Darren, Tim, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us today.
Yep, thank you.
Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping items. To the right of your screen, you'll find several icons, including the Q&A tab, which allows you to ask a question. Feel free to submit those throughout the program. You don't have to raise your hand, just type it into the Q&A box, and we'll definitely get to it throughout the conversation. If something comes to mind, please do not hesitate to ask. To start things off, I would like to engage our audience for a quick poll. Today, as we're talking through real-time insights, we want to get a better understanding of kind of where everyone stands. As you'll see to the side in the Q&A, you should see a poll. The first question, when it comes to your agency's mission, how important is capturing and sharing data from devices used in the field and at remote locations? And you'll see a variety of options from not at all important to extremely important, which I think we would most agree. But we'll see what our audience has to say. So I'll give you a minute to respond to that. So as people are filling that out, I want to thank everybody for helping us kick off today's program, and please be engaged, ask questions. We also, Government Business Council, which is the independent research division of Government Executive Media Group, did a recent poll as well on a similar topic, and I'll share some of those findings with everybody throughout the day and see kind of how that ends up and aligns with your own challenges. We'll come back to the responses, but first I want to introduce again Darren. Darren is going to provide us kind of with a brief overview of the state of states, I guess, when it comes to data management and gaining insights from the edge and data center. So Darren, with that, I will turn it over to you.
Hey, thanks a lot, James. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of start today by talking about some of the problems that we're seeing today and some ideas on some solutions. So Tim and I can really talk in depth about what we see going on out there. So one thing that we have seen is we've seen a major shift in the way that we traditionally do analytics, where I collect everything from the edge into my enterprise data center. And then I do all of my analytics in there, and I get all my visualization, and all my action comes out through analysts that are connected to the data center. This traditionally works really well when you don't have a lot of edge devices, or your edge devices have really big pipes into your data center. And now I can collect all the data in one place and perform work on that data. This is typically what we call a data lake or a data warehouse. And we've seen a lot of organizations go down this road over the last 10, 15 years. But what we're seeing now is something really interesting. What we're seeing is these edge devices out here are no longer just simple sensors. They're now full-blown computers, and in some cases, full-blown data centers in very compact solutions. So I've got smart edge out there. And what happens is I quickly grow into this vast array of ecosystems, especially when Tim and I were talking the other day about the Department of State. Just the sheer number of remote offices that the Department of State has really lends itself better to more of a distributed system, more than gathering everything in one place, because there's so much data and so much data in these remote locations that we've got to figure out a way to deal with this. So if I look at the mission space in Department of Defense or Department of Homeland Security or the civil agencies, I see lots of variety in things. People are using public clouds now, partway. They're using the enterprise data center. They have an aggregated edge in a regional data center. So what we traditionally did before by gathering everything in one place just can't happen anymore. So there's lots of different strategies that we have to deal with in order to now manage this really large, complex systems of networks, of compute and storage, smart devices out there that are semi-connected, connected part of the time, other times they're connected, at full bandwidth. People were touting, well, 5G is going to fix all this. 5G helps, but it doesn't fix the complexity that we're dealing with here. It just gives you bigger pipes between things, right? More secure and bigger pipes. So when we look at this mess that we've created over the years, we've got to come up with an ideal way of dealing with this. So when we look at this, let's write down what we want to have happen. Not what's happening now, but what do we want to have happen? Well, we want to decrease the time to insight on our data that's gathered everywhere. So wouldn't it be great if I gathered a petabyte of data at a remote site and I was able to run analytics there and then share those analytics with everyone? Wouldn't that be better than moving a petabyte of data? Right? In the old days, to move that much data, well, first off, we didn't have enough disk drives to store that much data. But even today, I've seen people take out disk drives out of one data center and physically ship them off to another data center because that was faster than trying to move it across the networks that they had. So even with faster networks, I think the amount of data that we have is going to continue to exponentially grow, and our networks won't be able to keep up. So we got to come up with a different strategy. We got to develop insights on the edge, right? We want this insight closer to where all that data is generated so we can get quick answers, right? But we also need to be able to gather information from multiple locations somehow and get insight from the aggregation of that data. So the big question is, well, how in the world do I do that without moving all the data to one place? So we got to come up with a strategy on how to do that. And then we also, as we're dealing with all this data, we've got to do a better job at securing the data and also governing that data. When does the data get removed? And if your answer is never, then I would argue with you that's not a data strategy. That's called data hoarding, and that's a whole nother podcast that I did just recently on data hoarding. Data hoarding is not a strategy. You need a governance model. You need to know when I get rid of data, when I keep data. So these are all important things. And then also, I need the ability to deploy my analytics jobs and AI or deep learning or AI models, whatever it may be, out closer to where the data is collected. So I need to be able to deploy these applications or models out to the edge, wherever it may be. And that could mean in a battleship in the middle of the Pacific, or it could mean in a drone flying around, or it could be in an embassy in Bahrain. It could be in several different places. So I've got to come up with a way to do this. Now, one thing that Intel's been working on is we've been building an ecosystem and talking to a lot of customers, in and inside the government and outside the government on all these use cases that they have. And we've been trying to bring software vendors together with hardware vendors together to develop a strategy, an architectural strategy on how do I approach this problem, right? And each one of these boxes is very complex and all the tools that are involved. But what we've started doing is how can I build a system based off of the integration of all the different tools that are out there that can help me have a common physical layer so I know that my applications can run anywhere. Make sure that it's software defined so I can spin it up and tear it down quickly through software instead of having someone having to physically go out and do something. And then also embracing that container ecosystem, that service ecosystem that is growing and blossoming right now. How do I leverage that on top of the multiple different clouds that I have that your software-defined infrastructure will give you? And then also a new area that we're starting to see a lot of growth in is information management across this ecosystem, inside the cloud, in the data center, on the edge. And we've called that the distributed information management layer. And then sitting on top of that is where you get your real value. This is your applications. How am I going to now tie together data that's distributed everywhere, containers that have services that are running on top of infrastructure spread all over the place in a secure manner where the security aspect is, and also identifying who's accessing the data as well as which machines are accessing the data, and the data has identity as well. So we're working right now with several partners to help build out the tools and the integration points to make this a reality. But we're still gathering lots of use cases from many people that are experiencing the same problems. So we're doing our best to try, and I think this webinar fits right into this. What are the problems that people are experiencing so that we can build out something that will help everyone tackle this big, huge problem that we've identified. So with that, I hope that tees us up pretty good, Tim and James. I will turn it back over to you, James, and let's get started with the party.
No, thank you, Darren. I think that was a great overview of what the challenges are and the current environments that agencies are dealing with, which is extremely complex and requires a sophisticated collaborative approach to it. Tim, let's before we get started in our Q&A, would you mind just giving our audience a brief description of your role and responsibilities at the Department of State?
Sure. Yeah, and thanks for Darren for teeing this up. I think you name it, and when we're working on it at the State Department. So my role is again, James mentioned earlier, I'm a deputy division chief in our Information Resource Management, or IRM bureau. IRM is the bureau that is centralized IT services for all of the Department of State. But naturally, we are a global organization, and we have reach all over the world. So we partner up with other kind of IT arms of the different bureaus of the Department of State. So that is one of my roles, and I work in the messaging systems office. We develop enterprise applications for the department, messaging, records management, and others. And then my other my dual hat is I am also the technical lead for the Center for Analytics, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, in a bit. But the Center for Analytics is a enterprise part of the organization that's helping enable staff in the Department of State to do more with their data and kind of bring it up to an enterprise level.
No, that's fantastic, Tim, and we'll definitely be diving into more of what all that means across the conversation. But let's start with IT modernization, because I think IT modernization really has been a foundation of the administration, a lot of agencies, as cloud is becoming more prevalent and agencies are adopting more cloud models. Certainly, IT modernization is part of the foundation of the PMA and the federal data strategy. So, Tim, let's start with you. How has Department of State and IRM been approaching modernization, and how has that provided a roadmap for your own data strategy?
Sure. Yeah. So again, a lot of the things Darren mentioned are challenges that we face as the department, and scaling the IT services that we have, applications that we have, and data management that we have across the department at embassies, consulates, posts worldwide, as well as our large operations here domestically, is always a fun challenge. Some of the things that we've been working on kind of along this IT modernization journey include a number of cloud enhancements. So again, if you look at our footprint, one cloud service isn't going to meet all of our needs. Historically, we've had a couple large data centers. Given kind of the federal footprint, a lot of that work is centralized back here in the States. But what we're looking at doing is enhancing and kind of stretching that out so that we can take advantage of commercial clouds where available and where it makes sense from a data sensitivity perspective. We're leveraging both kind of infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and kind of native software as a service. So trying to bring all that together in an ecosystem that is, as Darren mentioned, addresses security, but also provides more flexibility for our staff, and that's really critical, I think, to the work that we do. We're not centralized just here in the States, so we need to be able to support and be flexible with the IT capabilities that we provide to the field. And yeah, I think the other big one I would say that has probably been a big adaptation is resulting of COVID-19, and of course the whole world is dealing with this. So some of the IT modernization strategies that we had underway may have had to take a back seat to so that we could pivot and really support and enable our workforce globally with some telework capabilities that they didn't have previously. So I mean, enhancing some of the office productivity suites, obviously mobile devices, whether it's phones, laptops, and augmenting services that existed today with additional functionality, and then serving up certain things through virtual environments.
And so certainly the pandemic has accelerated, I think, a lot of that for a lot of agencies. I think that's also created a lot more data as well, and more access points and that sort of thing. So as you're looking across those different IT modernization, have you had to create a new data governance model to across some of those, in terms of, again, how that's impacting how the State Department at large and globally is managing that data, and not quote unquote data hoarding, as Darren eloquently had said before?
Yeah, so a couple of things. When we talk about IT modernization and we talk about data management, you can't start that conversation without talking about data analytics. And of course, earlier we mentioned the Center for Analytics, and just to give everyone a quick background on that, the Center for Analytics is something that the department stood up almost 2 years ago now, and this was senior leadership understanding and seeing the need to put more emphasis behind data-informed diplomacy, enabling our employees to upskill in kind of the data management, data analytics realm, and also take a lot of the great work, and this kind of really ties into edge computing, edge data management. There's a lot of great things that the department has, and our different bureaus are doing great work. The regionals and posts overseas are doing some good things. What the Center for Analytics is trying to do now is kind of raise all that up to an enterprise level and help connect the dots between all of these different areas of excellence, so to speak. From a data management perspective, as a part of kind of tied into the Center for Analytics, we have established an enterprise data council. That data council has representation from senior leadership across the different bureaus in the department. So we get all those different perspectives together, and they are actually helping to define a new enterprise data strategy, as well as governance, and provide some direction in terms of what do we prioritize? What are the most important data sets for the department that we need to make available and accessible to others, across the organization?
I love what you said there, Tim, because you guys are on what we would call the information management maturity curve. You're moving up into that, and you mentioned you're enterprising the data. Because I think you guys have already experienced it. You've got pockets of analytics that are happening, and we call those science experiments because they haven't been institutionalized, they haven't been enterpriseized, so that we can reuse that over and over again, and that it's repeatable. And it sounds like you guys are doing a great job with that enterprise data council and your total strategy on moving up that chain, because without doing that, you're not going to get all the real value that you really could at economies of scale. And you end up with these pockets of data analytics that are happening, and you're, oh, that's great. And you try and replicate it, and you can't. It costs too much money. It takes too long to do. So you guys are on the right track. We've seen other people move in the same direction.
And Darren, how, based on your experience with lots of different agencies, you had indicated that you guys are kind of pulling together as many use cases as you can to help further define what that, how to extend that architecture across different use cases and missions. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of what you've already gathered around like how important IT modernization is in that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, and Tim, when Tim and I talked the other day, I was like, man, they're going in the right direction. In order to make this really happen, you've got to talk about people and the changes that people need to make, and organizational changes. And there's new personas that we're starting to see come out. You guys mentioned, how do we get permission of data to certain people? We call that new persona a data steward. That's their job, is to manage and govern the data, following the strategy that a chief data officer is proposing. So these are new personas. These are new things that people haven't done before. So we're starting to see new tools being developed around that, which goes into a new process. So people, process, and technology. Processes are changing. You guys started the enterprise data council. This is a process change, right? Because now we're looking at data across the whole ecosystem instead of in silos. Big changes are happening. And then the underlying technology. We've seen huge shifts in the underlying technology with multi-hybrid cloud that gives me now more flexibility on deploying applications anywhere, including out on the edge. A really good multi-hybrid cloud architecture includes edge computing in that architecture. So now you can deploy applications anywhere. You can now use your technology to support your strategy instead of there being a miss. Because a lot of times people go, oh yeah, I want to be able to run analytics across 7 different data sets that have been siloed in the past. And then they go, oh, that's going to take 3 years to build out the infrastructure and break down all these firewall rules that COVID in a lot of respects has been a great catalyst to break down some of those barriers, both technically and organizationally and culturally, that we're seeing in organizations. So this is an exciting time for all this to happen.
No, absolutely. And let's stay on a couple of things that you guys mentioned. I know we had some questions, but we already have a question from the and comment from the audience. So I want to just encourage people to continue to send them in. I think the people and workforce conversation is critical to that data strategy and data governance and educating. So, one of the questions that we got, Tim, as you were talking about the council and educating, from a data scientist perspective, is now, if I can get back to that question, there we go. It's how have you been leveraging, domain experts, so to speak, and those analytics experts in educating or in managing that data strategy. How have you been able to build up that data science cadre, basically, of leaders, rather than hiring like a ton of data scientists?
Yeah, so I'd answer that in probably two ways. One, the Center for Analytics, part of the objectives, the mission of the Center for Analytics is to build the capacity within the Department of State, employees, build capacity to understand and be able to work with data and understand data and analyze data. So that's a huge part of our mission. And then developing a culture as well that supports that. And so from the leaders, from top down, bottom up, both sides are essentially saying this is really important. So within the Center for Analytics, when we take on an analytics project, when there is a business need, we work with the Bureau and the subject matter experts within that space, the domain experts, as it was stated, and they're a part of that process throughout, right? I think one of the worst mistakes that you can make is to think you understand domain information and get a data scientist and just dig in, right? Because if they don't have participation and involvement from those experts, then you're going to come to the wrong conclusions, most likely. So that's one area that we stress that up front every time we're working with a group, whether it's that domain or that bureau that has requested this product or has that business need, or it's a different group. We will partner up with the experts in that space. I think the other key point I wanted to make is around to key in on the training aspect. And so again, those major objectives and goals that we have for the Center for Analytics, we've fostered that through a relationship so the Department of State has a group called the Foreign Service Institute, or FSI. That is our training center. You can think of it as a little college where both civil service and foreign service employees can go. So folks overseas come back or attend virtual. Now, of course, we're doing a lot of virtual, but it gives them opportunities to train up and skill up in certain areas. And so the Center for Analytics has developed, in partnership with the Foreign Service Institute, 5 data-driven courses, all the way from kind of working level, get in and actually learn how to do data science and use some of the modeling tools and use visualization tools, up to kind of mid management, executive management. Here's how you can interpret and use data to inform decision making.
I think that's fantastic, Darren. Can you talk a little bit? I mean, where have you seen pockets of success, or what do you see as like the biggest barriers of that kind of training and the model in which, as Tim had said, kind of how important it is to bring mission people together with data scientists and the technical to actually define. And I know we'll talk a little bit about how do you glean insights from all of this data later on. But have you seen where pockets of success or?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because you do need the domain expertise. So there's always this question: do you have a centralized data organization under the CDO, or do you have a dispersed organization? I think in the Department of State, you guys are already so dispersed. I would embrace that, where you've got a strong CDO that then and you have the enterprise data analytics council. This is great, but then you've got to push your data scientists out in close to the domain experts. I think that's important. And I love the training aspect. One thing you have to be careful of, and I've seen this time and time again, when we went through the shift to cloud technology, instead of the siloed network engineer, storage engineer, compute engineer, people worried about their jobs. So when you come in and you try and make a change, people they'll just sit down and say, no, I'm not going to do that, because you're going to get rid of the importance of my job. So you've got to have an evangelist. You've got to have someone going out there and saying, let me show you the path where you can be even more valuable to the organization. And your work can be even more cutting edge and more fun by taking these trainings, that they can see a career path forward. I think that helps a lot, because people innately, they get comfortable. I know how to do my job. I know what you're doing. And you're saying this new stuff's going to get rid of it. I'm going to do everything possible I can to stop that from happening. So you've got to show them another road. And I love the training aspect. I think mentoring, you've got to have evangelists out there just getting people riled up, have a good old revival meeting. Get people standing on chairs and singing, whatever it takes, right? To move people forward, because it is a change, and it's hard. It's hard to make that change.
And Darren,
Yeah.
one thing I'd add just to what you were just saying, I think what we've seen is that engagement of the domain and subject matter experts, what the result of that is, they actually become more savvy in terms of data science, data analytics, right? Because they're along for the journey, and they bring the domain expertise. But as they're participating, you kind of see that culture change where they're like, I don't know about this, to, oh, this is really good. This is going to help me, and help my part of the organization. And then they can actually take some of those skills back and apply it within their groups.
Absolutely. And I would go for a quick win anytime you can, right? Especially with the domain experts. If you can show them something and it's a quick win, and they go, wow, this is cool, they will get excited about it. If you have a project that takes 3 years, it's gonna wear them down. They're gonna say, see, I told you this data analytics stuff is not worth it.
Well, and that was we got another question in, really about what we were talking about earlier around, enterprising or scalability. Tim, can you talk a little bit about how, like you mentioned, that the bureaus will often bring projects to you? How is that push-pull model? I think that, from what you guys are already doing around establishing the Center of Analytics and kind of having this enterprise data initiative, how did you guys kind of originally stand that up, and how are you looking to scale that across? I mean, as State Department has a lot of bureaus, it's a global organization, it's a huge organization. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys are planning that, how you stood this up, and then are taking out to where not only are you pushing out opportunities for the bureaus, but then, ensuring that the bureaus are also coming to you guys?
Yeah, sure. I think you could unofficially think of the Center for Analytics as a hub and spoke model, right? Where the Center for Analytics and the department saw, again, the importance of elevating our data and the way the processes and the modeling of our data to an enterprise level. And so there was an investment in this Center for Analytics to stand that up, to staff it, to put the right kind of skills in place with a focused mission to deliver some really key critical products that will aid the department. But part of that model was also, let's let all those other things I mentioned, right? Let's build the capacity. Let's build this culture and awareness across the department, with the understanding that there are bureaus in the Department of State that are very strong in this space already, right? We have groups, from whether you want to talk about geospatial analytics. There's groups that are pockets that are very strong in that area. You have other groups that are, within their domain are very mature in data analytics, have their own technology, have their own processes, and et cetera. And so within the Center for Analytics, we partner with those bureaus because they can already bring certain skills and capabilities to the table. With some of the smaller groups or even larger groups that just don't have those capabilities or those skills, we will actually, you can think of a light touch model where we advise certain groups, hey, this is something you might want to think about, to a partner model where it's, hey, you've got certain skill sets. For example, you've got some good data engineers and data managers. Maybe you don't have a data scientist that's strong in natural language processing. So we can actually apply that kind of a resource partnered with the bureau to deliver something to a more of a full scale delivery model where the bureaus understand the domain, they understand they have a business problem, but they don't have the skill sets. And so the Center for Analytics will partner up with them in that model and actually help them kind of from soup to nuts deliver an analytic product. And during that process, I think their staff, which has those domain expertise, is building some of the knowledge and skills in this area.
Darren, so I think that's great, Tim, and I think that speaks to Darren's comment about, having evangelists within the organization, how critical that is in top level buy-in from agency leadership, both from a commitment to the strategy and a commitment with investment dollars to be able to scale that, right? And Darren, like, how have you seen? Obviously, the Department of Defense stood up the JAIC specifically for this. Like, I mean, they stood up the JAIC to be the evangelist organization across the department and pulling in the services in order to identify those pockets of success, those domain expertise that they can then scale. Where have you seen other, models of success in doing this? Can an agency scale a strategy like this without having, setting up a center of excellence?
I think they can, but you need someone or a small, well, maybe you don't need a huge organization, but you do need a core foundation of people that will focus on this and that beat the drum. You need this constant message going out all the time. And it can be very hard sometimes, especially when tragedy strikes, like COVID. When that struck, right? People are like going, well, that project's pushed off because it's not important anymore. But you need someone constantly carrying the torch, constantly beating the drum, saying, yes, our data strategy is this and we're moving forward. If you don't have that, then there's no energy in it and it'll just dissipate over time. It'll be another shiny object that someone was chasing. Another thing that you have to worry about is if you do have the evangelists out there doing this, but you haven't built the infrastructure, the technical infrastructure underneath to enable and to make it easy to make this change, then people will be wandering around saying, you told me to go over here, but it takes so much effort to set things up. So you really need to do those three things in parallel, that technology, the people, and process, because you can get your organization moving. And if you haven't made the changes in the way that you do IT and the way that you manage data, then it's all going to collapse in on itself over time. So it's this balancing act that you constantly have to play with those three levers.
So if you have that, yeah, no, this is it's complex, but that's why we all have jobs. Well, that's why you.
Yeah, that's right.
So say you have that technology and you have kind of the, evangelists and you have a good data governance and do good data strategy. How do you turn data into actionable intelligence? The data can be a very powerful tool, as we all know, and it's being used as Tim has a number of use cases at state. You've talked about a number. How do you get that data into actionable intelligence to do something with it?
This is a great question with a very complex answer. It depends, and people right away, they want to go to what we call artificial intelligence foresight, where I'm predicting and I'm changing the future. But let's look at the maturity of information insight. We start first by just basic analytics that a lot of us are already kind of used to, but you've got to start there first. And then you can progress up the chain into predictability and then prescriptive and then up the chain as you're using different techniques in analytics, whether it's artificial intelligence with neural networks or several other algorithms. There's so many different things that you can pull on to do it. But what I tell people is don't jump too far ahead. If you do, then you're going to miss the foundational part that you need to build on top of. So don't jump directly to the most complex artificial intelligence algorithms that are out there, because you may not even know what data you have. You've got to go through the process of the different levels of analytics to get you through this. So make sure you have a good data scientist, number one, that understands those levels, that understands that a neural network doesn't solve everyone's problems, or a genetic algorithm doesn't solve every problem. You've got to pick the right tools. You've got to have a core foundation to build on to make that happen.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. And so one of the next questions is actually to that point, and as a follow on really to you, Tim, in terms of how are you taking data collection to glean insights? What have been the challenges at State Department for being able to do that? So, what are the tactical kind of use of data to make those informed decisions and support prioritization across the department?
Yeah, I think, as Darren was saying, one of the first challenges that we faced, just as an organization that is, I think, still maturing and along our journey of data management, data analytics, and data insights, is so we have we had process in place. We started to gain awareness of our data, and then it's, well, what are the tools that enable you to actually aggregate that data, visualize that data? And so that was one of the things that, the Center for Analytics, and again, in this partnership with our IT Bureau, IRM, that I'm a part of, we focused on, okay, we have a good strategy in place, but what technology and what architecture is going to enable our staff, both domestically and abroad, to do some of this work. And so that was an area we started with, was just let's establish some good enterprise BI or visualization platforms that allow people to actually do that first step, which is, as Darren was saying, start with there's a lot of data, and most of us, independent of some of those tools, can't pull all that data together to actually see and identify some themes. And so that's what I think we've seen a lot of, is by providing those tools. And I think, I'm sure, not unlike many other organizations, there were pockets of the department that had capabilities and had implemented technology solutions, but it wasn't really available at an enterprise scale. So we helped to do that. And what we've seen is a huge swell of interest and involvement in that first step, which is just leveraging tools like, Power BI, Tableau, whatever it may be, to visualize your data, and start to take their data and combine it and show some themes and some information that's helpful for the business to make strategic decisions.
And how do you manage in that, in terms of bringing that data forward? Is there any best practices that you guys have seen in terms of how to structure that data, or ensuring the quality of that data, and then access? So, I mean, I guess it's kind of three different, like, how do you structure it? How do you ensure the quality before you can allow, people to access it?
Yeah, so I'm sure Darren's got some thoughts. I'll just kick it off with one or two. I think, as we're people are maturing in this journey, starting to use a tool, starting to bring their data together and visualize it. As Darren was saying earlier, it's good to do these quick wins, right? So if they can take a couple different sets of data, pull them together and visualize it, that's great, right? And then what we, as the Center for Analytics and other parts of the organization, have been doing is thinking about it more strategically, as a part of that Enterprise Data Council, bringing some of these topics up and saying, how as an organization do we want to manage all this data? How do we want to associate it? Whether that's metadata management and metadata enrichment of data sets. So that's one of the areas that we've been focusing on, is establishing, as a part of that enterprise data strategy, an enterprise data catalog and inventorying process. So within that process, we're not necessarily pulling all the data into one environment. What we're doing is kind of reaching out, putting those feelers out, getting metadata about different enterprise data source sets, pulling that back in and exposing that in, you know, in an interface that users can interact with and understand what's actually available. And that, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we've certainly faced is data access and data awareness, right? You know, what data is actually out there that can help me solve this problem. And once I know what's out there and that data catalog and data inventory process will help with that, then how do I actually access the data? And that gets really complicated because we get into data sensitivities and breaking down some of those silos and whatnot.
So I'm glad you brought up the metadata. I see people make a huge mistake when it comes to that. A lot of times they'll just copy everything into a big data lake. And then people go, oh, I need access to that. And I need to clean that data a certain way. So then they make a copy out of the data lake onto their own systems. And what we find is several copies of data scattered all over the organization. The metadata layer that you're talking about is key to that distributed information management that you need to do, and make it discoverable. So if I'm running an analytics job where I want to know how many people wore red shoes yesterday, I'm going to gather that from several different sources. I don't want to change the data. I just want to be able to access the data and then fit that data into my application as I need it when I run the data without copying everything. Because what a lot of people end up doing is, as well, I know red shoe data is in 25 different databases, but those databases have other stuff in there too. So I end up copying everything. It takes a long time. So coming up with that, I love what you guys are doing, collecting where all my data is, putting it into a metadata layer so that I at least know where it is, and now I can access what I need to. The big trick on this, on data quality and access, is only giving access to data that is required at the right level of classification when it's required. And that means an underlying system that is much more complex than what we traditionally have today, which is hunt and peck, or call someone on the phone and say, hey, do you have a copy of this? Oh yeah, I do. I'll send you a link to a shared drive that I just put it up on you know, who knows? It could be even out in the public cloud now. And who knows what the classification of that data was? It's all gone. So we've got to do a better job as an industry. And this is where I'm seeing something's happening in the ecosystem to help with this. How do I govern? How do I access and manage this data that's scattered all over? So we're starting to see some good startups in this space and some old technology being dusted off and polished to make this really happen.
Darren, is there a best practice in terms of to be able to do all of that? Is there a storage or infrastructure kind of best practice as you're within that architecture to ensure that you're, you know, again, based on classification that helps, you know, streamline that access and even just storing the massive amounts of data that we just continue to collect?
Yeah, so one thing I always tell everyone is if you're not encrypting your data at rest or in flight, that's the first thing you should do. Everything should be encrypted. And then key management, there's some great key management tools out there that can help with managing who can decrypt it, when it can be decrypted. Most of your encryption can happen in silicon now, so you don't take a major hit. It's less than 1%. You're not even going to see that in some of these analytics jobs. The next thing I would say is you need a good metadata management layer so that you can start doing what Tim's org is doing, finding out where all your data is. It's amazing how quickly people lose their data. And this metadata manager, if it's just a catalog of where the data is, who owns the data, and its classification, that's a major first step. One thing I always tell people is there's a pretty good chance that you have several copies of the same data, and you run into this issue called which data is golden. which is your golden copy that you know you can trust. So now you've got a new concept of data trust. Do I trust that that data has not changed? Who's touched it? Who's manipulated it? A lot of times you don't know. Someone's just copied it and sent it to you. We got to get away from that. And that's where I say that first thing, that metadata management, that now gives me access to, all right, where is all my data? But you need to make sure that you're putting security controls on that, because you don't want everyone to know where all the data is either. That can be just as dangerous. But I would say that's probably your first step, collecting where your data is and classifying it. That's your first step. Once you get to that point, now you can start looking at, okay, how can I now derive business value or enterprise value or mission value out of the data sets that I now have access to? I think that's the next step that you move down.
I want to move to talking a little bit about the edge, right? We know that I think COVID has accelerated the number of edge devices, but even just IoT in general has the technology, and that ecosystem continues to grow and provide value for mission. In our recent Government Business Council survey, 7 of 10 respondents consider the ability to capture and share information from devices at the edge is extremely important to their agency's mission. And before I pose kind of the question around that, which I want to explore, the differences in managing and making actionable data that's generated at the edge versus on-site location, I do want to hear again from our audience kind of about the edge, because that's certainly edge devices, and you talked about it earlier, Darren, in your presentation about edge computing and that moving out to the edge. So I'd like to post another poll to the audience on how soon do you believe your agency will reach a point where it is generating more data at edge locations than on-site locations. And so with that, I will, Tim, I'll throw that one to you first. Like, what are some of the differences in terms of how State Department is managing data at the edge versus on-site locations?
Sure. I think so. To start, just to orient around some of the things that we are doing from an edge, when I look at the mission of the Department of State, naturally we've been doing edge computing for a long time, right? Now edge technology and edge devices, that's a newer frame of it, but our mission, and with the embassies, post consulates all over the world, we've got infrastructure, we've got people, processes, technology everywhere. So it's always been a part of our process to capture that, figure out the best ways to manage that, as some of the things Darren was mentioning earlier. Where does it make sense to have regional centers? Where does it make sense to have edge devices that capture some of this information, i.e. logs, and not ship everything back, right? But to kind of blend into, I guess, the IoT side and the newer work that I think, newer technologies, the department is investing in a big way in IoT networks. We, from a greening perspective, greening diplomacy, as well as, just facilities management. We have sensors out there that are collecting data on our buildings and the equipment near real time. Some of that information, and we see edge computing as an enabler to help us manage and leverage bandwidth better at our overseas facilities. And then from the greening side of the house, if you look at air monitoring, that's a big one for us. We've got, Foreign Service staff and supporting staff all over the globe. Some of these places, the air quality is not good. And so having IoT sensors that can indicate when it's safe for, your families and your children to go outside and play, or when it's safe to go to work versus when you need to stay home. Those are some of the things that we're doing right now, and leveraging some of those technologies to move into spaces a little bit more robustly into building management, environmental, and vehicle management.
Darren, how about you? How are you seeing agencies and organizations?
So yeah, let me tell you a story about an industry that is going through this massive change, and we're starting to see it in Department of Defense as well. The automotive industry. They've been doing edge data collection for 20 years. With programs like OnStar, which collect data on how the car is operating and all that. They send that data back to GM in that case, and they're collecting all this data. And what's fascinating with the cars today is the amount of data that they're collecting and how do I manage all that data? So a typical car, and this is just sensors on the car, this is without autonomous vehicles. They're collecting about 250 kilobytes of data every minute, and they're sending that back to their data centers. They really don't want to send it all back. So they're starting to put compute in the cars. So now with this compute in the car, I can now run analytics jobs in the cars themselves. So it can be more predictive. It can do things better and only send back changes to the data center. Because when you're talking about an automotive maker, you're talking 100 million cars. Could you imagine trying to manage, Tim, 100 million data centers on wheels? That would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Right? So we're really working with the automotive industry. Department of Defense has a lot of similar types of things where how do I manage applications now running out there on that edge? How do I make sure that someone hasn't hijacked it and put in some malware into a car or into a drone or whatever it is? So there's some really great technologies and architectures, just like I showed at the beginning, that architecture that lets me deal with that whole ecosystem, 100 million nodes, as if it's one data center. So now I can deploy and update services and applications and only move data as I need to move data. The collection of data is so much larger than the size of the applications. It doesn't make sense anymore just to move data around everywhere. It makes more sense now to move the data close to where the applications close to where the data is. So we're seeing a major shift in that, and that will help out quite a bit with managing the edge.
Yeah, in our recent GBC survey, which we're putting together a best practice playbook. 18% of them said that their agencies are starting to generate more data at the edge than on site. I think it's it's kind of an interesting split here with our own poll in terms of agencies that are still, they believe, 5 to 10 years out, which seems crazy given the amount of data that is being collected from the edge and devices there as well. Do you see, we talked about it a little bit, you touched on 5G earlier, Darren, but and it sounds like Tim, the State Department is starting to deploy more IoT capabilities in areas of green and certainly facilities management. The is already moving to 5G pilots and smart bases, but do you see where the automobile industry, like how far are we away from, do you think, agencies being at that point where they're, generating more data at the edge?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, it's something that many of the federal agencies are looking into, and we're no different. We are certainly looking into it. I think 5G is a very challenging landscape from a federal perspective. Obviously, there's a lot of security concerns and sensitivity. So we're looking into and exploring private networks and the abilities there. But I think it would be amazing to have some of that technology. It would enable our embassies to communicate better with all the different properties, the consulates and posts and missions in the area. So it's something that we're definitely involved in, but I think it is still early days for us.
Wrapping up here, we only have a few minutes, so just to close us out here, we'll start, Tim, with you. For our audience, what's one practical kind of takeaway? We've talked about a lot. We've talked about how complex this is. Is there one actionable takeaway that you would offer maybe for an agency that's just starting this journey, or one that might be as far along as the Department of State in terms of maximizing data at the edge?
Yeah, I think, we at the Department of State are still, in my opinion, very early on in our journey, but I think we've made some great strides. The best advice I could share is, focus on some quick wins, because that will build confidence. It'll gauge parts of the organization. But I'd also really stress the importance of an enterprise data strategy and governance, and getting that leadership buy-in. Having that investment is critical to the success of a long-term program.
I totally agree with you, Tim. You need that high level success. I would also add to what Tim said, get some good evangelists and get them on the road once we can travel again, and get them sitting down with people and walking them through the benefits of this migration, because it's extraordinary once you discover your data and what you can do with it. You can change the world. Frankly, there's a lot out there that we can do.
Well, I want to thank both of you guys very much. I think that we definitely left our audience with a number of best practices and strategies and what to be thinking about kind of on this road. And it is a journey and it is complex. And it's constantly changing and will never really go away. So we have to be adaptive. But that concludes our program. Again, on behalf of Intel, I want to thank our audience for tuning in. Please, we're going to be sending out a short survey after this. So please, take the time to fill that out. We kind of want to get your feedback on, as a result of attending, are you, more likely to consider, these technologies with your edge computing projects and mission? So we want to keep this conversation going. It'll also be available on demand, and we encourage you to share it with your colleagues. So thank you very much again, Tim, Darren. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us, James.